If someone had told me 5 years ago that my future wife would one day tell thousands of strangers online that we were a power couple living the modern luxury dream, while I unclogged a client's fuel injector with a screwdriver and a prayer, I'd have laughed them out of the room. Back then, I was just a regular guy with dirty hands and simple hopes. I worked as an auto electrician in a modest garage just outside our small town. Nothing fancy. The kind of job where your clothes always smelled vaguely of burnt oil and WD-40, and your lunch breaks were spent leaning against old pickups, eating gas station sandwiches, while arguing over whether carburetors were truly dead. But I was happy, or at least content. My wife, Vanessa, was the kind of woman who used to scoff at influencers. "People wasting hours editing their lives into lies," she said once, waving off a girl taking a selfie in a cafe. She used to wear oversized hoodies, no makeup, and believed a Friday night was best spent binge-watching trash TV with a blanket and a six-pack. Then we moved to the city. Biggest mistake of my life. It started harmlessly enough. New zip code, new job offers, more noise, more lights. She said the city would give us more opportunities. I assumed she meant financially. Turns out she meant emotionally, spiritually, and aesthetically, at least for her. The first sign was her obsession with lighting. Suddenly, every room in our new apartment needed to have warm, ambient tones for a vibe. She bought string lights, then ring lights, then started positioning me like a prop in our own living room. "Can you sit on the couch and pretend you're reading?" she asked once, just so she could take a candid shot for her newly created Instagram page. I thought it was cute at first. Everyone needs hobbies, right? Some people collect stamps. Vanessa collected carefully staged moments of pretend wealth. Her captions were masterpieces of detached self-delusion, starting our day with gratitude and espresso. Soon, our $300 secondhand coffee table became a vintage centerpiece sourced from a sustainable artisan, and our busted Honda Civic was mysteriously absent from every shot. She made it look like we lived in a goddamn Netflix condo with floor-to-ceiling views of downtown. In reality, our loft had a mold problem and a view of a liquor store that was open 24/7, mostly because someone was always being arrested outside it. I didn't mind at first. I thought it was a phase, maybe even a creative outlet. But then she started saying things like, "Babe, do you mind not wearing that shirt when we go out? It's not really on brand." Or my personal favorite, "It's not that I don't appreciate you. I just feel like you're not evolving with me." I wasn't evolving? Lady, I rewired a Tesla last week with a manual and a hangover. If that's not evolution, I don't know what is. She began spending more and more time on her phone, editing, posting, liking, commenting. Her followers grew. Her ego grew faster. Suddenly, she was coaching people on personal branding and writing blogs about sacred feminine alignment. And all I could think was, is sacred feminine alignment what happens when you ghost your husband while posting a filtered photo of your salad? At night, we no longer watched TV. We curated digital ambiance, which meant she sat with her AirPods in, editing reels, while I scrolled through Reddit, slowly realizing that half the stories were starting to feel a little too familiar. By the time she hit 10,000 followers, she threw a little party. She invited her new networking circle, women with names like Kiara Luna and Sasha Vortex. They wore wide-brim hats indoors and said things like, "You need to stop living small." I stood in the kitchen in my oil-stained shirt, holding a paper plate of hummus, and thought, maybe I am living small. Or maybe I'm just the only one here not suffering from delusions of grandeur. You know what's fun? Being financially waterboarded with your own love. Somewhere between her fourth brand collab, translation, free body scrub for an Instagram story, and the third time she called my lunch a poverty plate, Vanessa began treating me less like a partner and more like a setback to her personal growth. She started dropping these subtle bombs during breakfast, always after a sip of her oat milk latte. "You know, babe, some guys at my networking events are really driven. Like, They're scaling businesses. What are you scaling? Car batteries? Funny, because last week I scaled a 30-foot scaffolding in the rain to fix a rooftop solar panel for a client that paid our rent. But sure, let's talk about Gary, the crypto king with 4 pending fraud charges. At first, it was emotional pressure, snide comments, passive-aggressive jokes in front of her friends. He's a real hands-on guy, with grease, rust, and probably lead poisoning. They laughed. I smiled. Because what else do you do when you're the punchline of a joke in your own home? Then came the actual pressure. She wanted a new car, not because ours was broken, but because aesthetic is everything. Apparently, a scratched-up Civic didn't match the aesthetic of her ritual skincare unboxing videos. Babe, I'm embarrassed to be seen in that car. It screams mediocrity. So, I did what any self-disrespecting man drowning in a marriage with a social media sorceress would do. I took out a loan I couldn't afford and bought her a damn car. A sleek white Audi with tinted windows and monthly payments that made my stomach twist every time I looked at my bank account. She posted a story the day she got it. Grateful for new beginnings and the universe aligning. No mention of me. No, thanks to my husband who's now in debt up to his eyeballs. Just a boomerang of her spinning in the driveway like she just got engaged to a Formula One driver. Our house, correction, our 900 square feet apartment with peeling wallpaper, became a set. We didn't buy things because we needed them. We bought things because they looked good next to eucalyptus leaves in a vase. Our walls weren't decorated with memories. They were decorated with motivational quotes in fake calligraphy fonts like, "Breathe in abundance." I was breathing in credit card bills and dust from the broken HVAC unit. And when I tried to talk about money? Oh no, that was low vibration energy. "You're always so negative," she'd say. "Maybe if you thought more abundantly, we wouldn't have to worry." Of course, silly me. I should have just manifested a second job. Even the intimacy packed its bags and left. Hard to feel desire when your wife spends more time caressing ring lights than your actual face. When I brought it up, she said something along the lines of, "I'm focused on building my empire. Intimacy is just a distraction." Cool. Meanwhile, I was building electrical panels and intimate with exactly no one, not even myself, because even that felt like cheating on my unpaid loans. And yet, despite the slow emotional erosion, I stayed. Because when you love someone, you hold on, even when they dangle your self-worth like a prop in a staged flat lay. I told myself things would change, that maybe it was a phase, that maybe, just maybe, the woman I married, the one who once danced in the kitchen in her pajamas, laughing over burnt toast, still existed beneath the layers of curated perfection and borrowed luxury. But I was wrong. She didn't want a husband. She wanted a backdrop. I remember the night it all really started to shift. It was a Thursday, the unofficial day for mid-tier wine nights and low-tier excuses. Vanessa came out of the bedroom dressed like she'd just stepped out of an influencer boot camp in Milan. Hair curled, lips glazed and something shiny enough to signal a passing aircraft, and a dress that screamed, "I don't eat carbs, but I ruin lives." "Going out?" I asked, pretending I didn't already feel the familiar throb of dread in my chest. "Yeah," she said, applying mascara with the concentration of a neurosurgeon. "Client dinner, big investor, might sponsor my wellness brand." "Her what now?" I blinked. "Wait, what wellness brand?" She laughed. "Ugh, you never listen. The thing I'm building, holistic coaching, branding guidance, sacred alignment. We've talked about this." "Oh, that thing. The thing that's existed for 3 months and made $0 but had its own mood board on Pinterest and a business card with gold foil lettering." She grabbed her purse, the one I had to take a side job to help her buy, and headed for the door. "Should I come with you?" I asked. Not because I wanted to crash her party, but because husbands usually attend business dinners too. At least the ones who are still allowed to be seen in public. She gave me a pity smile, the kind you give to someone who just tried to use a fax machine in 2025. "Babe, It's more of a networking thing. You wouldn't really fit in. Fit in. Right. Because nothing screams poor aesthetic choice, like a husband who works with his hands and doesn't own a single piece of beige linen. She left in a blur of perfume and ambition, and there I stood, fork in hand, taco mid-bite, like some tragic leftover from the pre-Instagram era. From then on, things snowballed. She started coming home later and later, always with an excuse. Traffic was crazy. We had post-meeting drinks. I stayed over at Sasha's to brainstorm our launch strategy. Her phone, which used to live on the nightstand, was now glued to her hand like it was surgically implanted. And locked. With a passcode, which she changed. Twice. She started wearing perfume again, the expensive stuff she once called too much for every day. She wore it to the grocery store and to strategy meetings. And let's not forget the wardrobe upgrade. Vanessa, who once said heels are a patriarchal death trap, was now tottering around in stilettos that cost more than my toolbox. She said it was all part of the brand. I tried not to assume the worst, because that's what loyal husbands do, right? They give the benefit of the doubt while the doubt kicks them in the teeth. But the cracks were widening, and every time she smiled at her phone or adjusted her cleavage before a coaching call, I felt something in my gut, something cold, tight, and impossible to ignore. So, when I happened to look out the window one night and saw her stepping out of a sleek black BMW, laughing, flipping her hair, touching some guy's arm like she'd rehearsed the move in a mirror, I knew. It wasn't Sasha. It wasn't traffic. It wasn't business. It was betrayal, dressed in Hugo Boss and holding the door open. And that was the moment I stopped being confused and started being curious. She walked into the house like nothing happened, like she hadn't just stepped out of a luxury sedan driven by a man who definitely moisturizes his neck and probably refers to himself in the third person. I was at the kitchen counter, pretending to scroll through my phone while actually scrolling through all the ways to say, "You're cheating on me," without sounding like a contestant on a daytime talk show. "Hey," I said casually, like my heart wasn't currently beating the drums of war. She smiled. "Hey, babe. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was insane." Ah, yes. Good old traffic. That mysterious car-shaped force of evil that only affects her vehicle, and only when she's returning from business meetings, wearing perfume strong enough to knock over a mule. I leaned against the counter, looked up from my phone, and went for it. "You, get dropped off just now? Didn't look like our car." She blinked, paused. That half second of silence where the brain scrambles for something better than the truth. "Oh yeah, that was one of the investors I told you about. We were at a client dinner. He was just being nice, offered a ride. I didn't want to Uber. It felt awkward." Awkward? You know what's awkward? Watching your wife smooth down her dress and giggle in someone else's passenger seat while you're home trying to figure out if leftover rice is still edible after 3 days. I raised an eyebrow. "Investor, huh?" "Yes, babe. You really should listen when I talk about my business. I'm building something real." "Right. Something real. Like your marriage vows? Or that coaching certificate you printed from a website with 4 typos on the homepage?" I didn't push it. Not yet. I just nodded and said something polite. Maybe even made a joke. That's what she expected from me. The affable, simple, non-threatening husband who didn't ask too many questions as long as the bills got paid and the houseplants didn't die. But inside I was done, because I knew what I saw. I saw the way she looked at him, not like a ride home, but like a fantasy she thought no one noticed. And I'd played the fool long enough. So the next morning, while she was taking a shower, I opened my toolbox, installed a GPS tracker in the undercarriage of her Audi in less than 10 minutes. Clean, hidden, no drama, just data. Then I waited. That week, I became a professional in the art of smiling through betrayal. She laughed at her phone. I smiled. She came home late from meetings. I smiled. She kissed me on the cheek while smelling like a hotel lobby. I smiled and checked the GPS logs. And oh boy, did they light up like a Christmas tree of infidelity. Her strategy sessions, hotel. Her meditation class, hotel. Her silent retreat, literally the same hotel. I watched the pattern build like a spreadsheet of lies. Days, times, durations, all while she floated through the apartment in athleisure and spiritual superiority, sipping her smoothies and quoting affirmations off Pinterest. By the time Saturday rolled around, I decided to see it for myself. I parked across the street, sat low in the seat like a man with both dignity and a telephoto lens, watched her walk out of the hotel lobby, laughing, touching the same BMW guy's arm. And then they kissed. Not a "thanks for the ride" kiss, a "see you later in bed" kind of kiss. I took a photo. Then I went home. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel broken. I felt ready. When I got home that night, I didn't do what every sad husband in a Netflix drama does, throw a whiskey glass against the wall and sleep in his truck. Nope. I opened my laptop, poured myself a drink, and Googled two things. Divorce attorney. How to start a YouTube channel that ruins a person without catching a lawsuit. Because here's the thing. I wasn't interested in begging, pleading, or even confronting. That's what she wanted. A dramatic scene to post vague quotes about afterward. Sometimes you have to break to become whole. Yeah, no thanks. I wanted strategy. I wanted receipts. And above all, I wanted to hit her where it hurt. The aesthetic. So while she was out attending a weekend retreat on feminine resilience, translation, meeting at the same hotel, I spent my time doing something far more useful. I backed up every GPS log, saved every photo, downloaded every overly filtered, nauseating Instagram post she'd ever made, especially the ones where she wrote captions like, "Trust is everything in a conscious relationship," which is just chef's kiss levels of ironic, considering she was probably uploading that while still sweating from her investor's spiritual alignment. Then I got legal, met with a lawyer, a woman named Deborah who looked like she could file for divorce and perform an exorcism in the same meeting. She loved my folder, called it the most organized breakdown of marital fraud she'd seen this year. We got to work. I moved my name off the joint accounts, froze the credit card, made a backup of every document, took my name off her business license, because yes, she had sneakily listed me as co-owner without telling me, transferred savings into a protected account, shifted the lease into my name only. I even canceled her gym membership, not out of pettiness. Okay, a little out of pettiness. Then came the masterpiece. I launched a YouTube channel, just a quiet little thing. No name calling, no faces. Just a soft-spoken man talking about the rise of false identities in social media marriages, complete with B-roll footage of staged brunches, filtered selfies, and people who claim to be soul-led entrepreneurs, while emotionally abandoning the person paying their Wi-Fi bill. The video was called, "I was married to a brand, not a person." I blurred her face. I changed names. But oh, the quotes, the voice recordings, the photos of her investor's car pulling up to the hotel. Crystal clear. It didn't take long. By the end of the week, the video had 100,000 views. Comments flooded in. "OMG, I follow her. This is why I don't trust these aesthetic relationships." "Bro, you handled this like Batman." Her follower count started to drop. First a few dozen, then hundreds, then thousands. Her inbox, a war zone of angry messages, unfollows, and screenshots of her hypocrisy. She tried to go private. She tried to rebrand. But the internet remembers. Even worse, for her, clients started backing out. That sponsorship? Gone. The essential oils MLM she joined? Cut ties. Some poor intern at her coaching school left a comment that simply said, "We had no idea. We're reevaluating our ambassador program." Meanwhile, I was sitting in the garage, drinking coffee from a chipped mug, watching the numbers rise. Calm, focused, almost amused. Because for the first time in months, I wasn't ashamed of being me. I wasn't some background character in her curated life. I was the damn plot twist. She came home like a hurricane that had just gotten dumped. She burst through the door in full crisis mode, no makeup, and a frantic expression that said, "I just watched my empire fall apart between two soy lattes." She slammed her phone down on the counter and spun around to face me like I was the customer service manager for her collapsing life. "Did you do something?" Now, in any other situation, I'd have asked what she meant. Feigned confusion, played dumb. But after weeks of gaslighting, betrayal, and her very public performance as the poster child for divine feminine boss energy, I just smiled. "Be more specific." Her jaw clenched. She started pacing, waving her arms in that influencer meltdown kind of way. "My DMs are full of hate. I got dropped from the wellness retreat brand. People are saying there's a video going around. Some guy talking about me." I took a sip of my coffee. No rush. Let it breathe. Huh. Weird. Wonder who'd do that. She narrowed her eyes like a lizard realizing the heat lamp was a lie. "You ruined me." "Oh, honey. No. You ruined yourself." I just held up the mirror and let the ring light do its job. She started crying. And not the cute influencer cry where a single teardrop rolls down a perfectly contoured cheek. No, this was the snotty, unfiltered cry. The kind of cry that screams, "I'm not sorry, I'm just exposed." "I made a mistake," she sobbed. "It didn't mean anything. I was just lost." "Hotel?" I said flatly. "You were lost 3 times a week? That's practically a lease." She dropped into a chair like gravity finally caught up with her lies. Then came the bargaining. "Maybe we can fix this. I can rebrand. We could do it together. A redemption arc. I'll talk about healing, forgiveness, marriage resilience. You could even be in the videos." And that's when I pulled out the envelope. Clean, white, thick paper. The kind of paper you use when you're printing the end of someone's illusion. I placed it gently on the table in front of her. "That's not a script," I said. "That's the divorce paperwork." She stared at it like it was written in ancient Sumerian. "You can't be serious." Oh, I was serious, calm, untouchable. Because the thing about being married to a walking, talking aesthetic is that eventually you realize the real thing is worth a hell of a lot more, even if it has grease under its fingernails and doesn't know how to use Lightroom. She begged. She blamed. She even tried seduction, but it was like watching someone try to resuscitate a corpse with a scented candle. And me? I didn't yell. I didn't gloat. I just walked out of that room, feeling 10 years younger and 50 pounds lighter. A month later, she had to shut down her account. She tried to start a new one under a different name or some equally tragic reboot, but the internet doesn't forget. Or forgive. Sponsors pulled out. Even her old networking circle left her on red. BMW guy? Gone. Poof. Probably moved on to his next manifestation. And me? I kept the YouTube channel. Turns out people love a well-told passive-aggressive takedown of influencer culture. The channel grew, fast. And one day, I posted a new video. Just me. No drama, no filters, no fake plants in the background. Me, smiling, holding a coffee mug that says, "Still greasy, but free." Because sometimes the best revenge is a man who finally learned how to love the sound of his own peace.